Hello and welcome to Overwatch This. On this week's show, we've got Symmetra's upcoming buff, the possibility of the game receiving a map editor, the most prestigious tournament we've had so far, and changes that are now live on the PTR. Hello everybody, it is Joel here from PC Games N, and I am joined by Ben.
Hello.
And this is the first episode of our new series, Overwatch This, which is very clever, obviously. Like that, Ben?
Yeah, no, it was actually me that came up with it, and every time I hear it...
it's all collaborative, so, you know.
It makes me wish I didn't, but, you know.
So, yeah, this is a new weekly show talking all things Overwatch, which, we know you guys love some Overwatch. So, hopefully we'll be coming at you with some new information, some rumours, what's going on in the game, the wider world of Overwatch, etc. and so on. So we'll crack on with a buff that is shortly going to be occurring to Symmetra.
Yeah, so this was something that Kaplan announced in an interview. He was talking to Business Insider, of all people, and they were asking him about, what's it like trying to develop the game, who you looking at the moment to try and change, and Symmetra was who he brought up. The main reason for this was because she's very situational, and she's also one of the least played characters in the game, or at least she was last time they talked about stats, despite having a very high win rate.
Now, when you say situational, for the non-expert out there, what situations does she prosper in or does she fail in? She's
very exceptional on defense. She's got these turrets she can place. Her ultimate is a teleporter, which works best if you're trying to keep the enemy in one place rather than always trying to push forward to the next objective. And if you can easily defend the position that teleporter is in, because it is destroyable by enemy players, that's the kind of place she really wants to be in. And then on the attack, because of the way her turrets work, which are obviously stationary, it's very difficult for her to be as effective as another hero might be. In fact, basically any other hero might be. But on defense, she's exceptionally powerful. And one of her other abilities, which is the alternate fire on her basic weapon, is very good at going through Reinhardt shields, who's a very popular character on attack. So she can very specifically counter certain stuff, but that isn't the kind of thing that they want to have in the game, basically.
Now, is this something we saw coming? Is this obviously characters get sort of buffed and nerfed on an ongoing basis, but was this something that kind of came out of the blue, or was this been predicted? Has this been asked for? What's the situation?
This is the kind of thing I think people have been looking for Symmetra changes ever since she was added to the game, really. There was small tweaks made to her because her win rate was exceptional at one point, and they halved the power of her shields that she can give out to allies, so that she was giving less passive healing, basically. Because obviously if you have more health, that's effectively a form of healing, where you're going to outlast your opponents. And Overwatch, certainly a more casual level, is pretty much all about who can just stay on the field longest, putting out damage as much as possible. Right. Obviously, how much you can aim, that's important as well. But the more health you have, the longer you're going to survive against 2 or 3 enemy players, the more capability you have to outplay them, beat them, and either get onto the point and capture it, or stay on defense for as long as possible and stop the enemy team attacking. So yeah, there've been people asking for changes for her for a while, because it seems like she's very difficult to balance because of all those situations where she's either very, very good or pretty much useless. But whether those changes are going to be, we've tweaked a couple of numbers and now we think she's okay, or if they're going to be the larger changes that it feels like Kaplan's talking about in this interview, that's something that was up for debate until now. So
this is going to happen in November, but we don't know when. Is that right?
Yeah, that's pretty much what he said. It seems like he was kind of giving a time frame where he didn't want to say it was this month, in October, sorry. But he also didn't want to say, it's not going to be till next year. Right. And we're kind of, we're running out of time at this point for that to fit into.
Yeah, and is this going to happen in isolation, or do you think this will be part of a wider patch that happens with possibly more character changes or some other deploys?
I think it's unlikely that they would just be like a small patch that was just, here's the bunch of Symmetra changes, because that's just pretty much not how they work. They do, work in cycles. They always put in a bunch of bug fixes and that sort of thing. Whether it will be like the next big patch, so to speak, that's the kind of thing that people are really wondering about at the moment. And it could be, because this is probably going to be after BlizzCon. BlizzCon's the first weekend of November, assuming this patch comes out, maybe a week or 2 weeks into it. This could be the patch that is whatever they announce at BlizzCon, be that new characters, new maps, or all of the above. Or it could be, just a patch with, here's some Symmetra changes, some smaller changes to a couple of other characters, and so on.
Okay, so as you say, you mentioned BlizzCon there. Any other sort of predicted changes to other characters? Any other things that might come in this patch? Like you say, it probably will be more than that. So what else could people get excited for?
I think that'll depend on what happens, both in terms of the esports scene. And in terms of casual play over the next month or so. If the esports scene, there's a big tournament going on at the moment that we're going to talk about in a little bit. Plus, there'll be the World Cup happening at BlizzCon itself. If that proves that this character's a little overpowered or this character's not getting picked as much as we like, I can imagine that patch will be the one that's like, okay, here's how the scene is going to work for the next couple of months until the next big patch after that. So, if you're into the competitive scene or if you're really trying to climb the ladder, really getting into the ranked play, this could be the patch that, kind of shakes things up and decides the characters you're going to be playing into January, February.
So some potentially very, very big news, although it's speculative rather than confirmed at the moment, is a map editor. Now, this has just come somewhat out of the blue as far as I'm concerned anyway, but this could be massive.
Yeah, this could be absolutely huge. I mean, a map editor is something everybody wants, obviously. People like to design their own maps. Purely, from a totally casual perspective, people like making stuff, right? Minecraft's quite popular. You may have heard of it. That's pretty much built on this concept. But it's also massive for the future of the game. StarCraft wouldn't exist without the ability that people had to make maps when it comes to the esports scene. Same with Counter-Strike. Same with basically any game. I mean, Dota 2 is a custom map that was made for another game. So yeah, the idea of a map editor is huge. And where it's come from is that Kaplan posted on the forums. He was kind of on a bit of a posting spree in one thread, and someone asked him, hey, do you guys want to make a map editor? And he said, we do, and we're going to, but it's going to be a long time. It kind of depends on a lot of different factors going forward.
So, I mean, this would address one of, not that there are many criticisms of the game, but one of the key criticisms is sort of a lack of content, a lack of the constant evolution of the content that is there. This would essentially make that content kind of infinite and ever evolving. So it would change things hugely dramatically. Yeah,
it would. I mean, it would make the value proposition of buying the game just infinitely bigger. Once you have developers going from however big the development team is at Blizzard, 100 people, whatever, to the population of the game, 15 million at the point, that we're talking now, that's just a massive expansion on how many people are creating content for the game and how much stuff there is to do. And that also just inevitably means that the quality goes up. 100 trained professional developers is very, very good. 15 million untrained developers are eventually going to make, a diamond.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we see what players can make now. Look at something like Hitman with its contracts mode and stuff like that. It's, well, mostly brutal, but quite fascinating what people use these tools to do. So, I mean, like, as I said, this could be massive, but we don't really know if and when it's going to happen. Any sort of rough time frame?
No, I mean, all he said was that it would not be happening anytime soon. Not only is it gated behind, actually having to make it, but Overwatch was built on a new engine for Blizzard. It's basically all completely new, and they just don't have the tools yet to be able to enable this sort of production outside of the company. Whereas, say, StarCraft 2 was kind of built on engines that they had before and was also specifically designed to be able to do this. Overwatch was kind of designed, developed as it was going. Obviously, it was built on some of this older tech that they were using for Titan before that was cancelled. And they just don't have the stuff in place yet where they can put out something that they feel is of their quality. As well as, probably security concerns and that sort of thing where they don't want to give out just, here's our development tools, don't worry about it.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because, to put that out on a forum, that could have been like a massive announcement at BlizzCon or something, like, oh my gosh, we're going to have a map editor. It's quite a thing to just sort of sneak out on a post.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that indicates kind of how far out it probably is. The question he was answering specifically was after you get a server browser, which is another thing that, people are really into, that people would really like because, people love the idea of having server communities. So, that's another feature that we don't have yet, that we probably aren't going to have for, 6 months plus. And that's ahead of this idea that he's talking about now. But it is good to hear about. It is something that is interesting, and it's the kind of thing that they are going to post on the forums because they want people to know that they're thinking about it. And they want to make it clear that, it's a long way out, but it is something that might eventually happen. So don't get angry at us that it doesn't happen yet, but don't get angry at us that we're not even thinking about it.
Sure. Neck on the line, give me a release date. When will the map editor release?
It will be announced at BlizzCon next year, and
wow.
it will release in summer 2018.
Jeez, that is a long time away.
After many delays.
If you guys want to guess when it will come out, put it in the comments. If anyone actually gets it, we'll send you some prizes.
What are we gonna send them?
Some prizes, as I just said.
Some prizes.
Some really good prizes.
All right.
So you teased it earlier, but there is some competitive Overwatch going on right the hell now in the form of the Overwatch Open.
Yeah, this is pretty much the biggest tournament the game's had so far. In terms of prize pool, it literally is. There's $300,000 on the line. First place gets $100,000 split between 6 people. That's still pretty good for playing Overwatch. I would take it, personally.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it'd be okay.
I mean, I wouldn't because I wouldn't win, but, hypothetically, I'd take it.
And it's also, I would say, the most prestigious. There's good teams from all around the world there. There's 16 teams, 8 from the US, 8 from the EU. Those teams don't get to play very often because there aren't that many LAN events at the moment. Mm-hmm. It's not like, Counter-Strike or Dota where there's a LAN event, every month where all the best teams show up and there's loads of money on the line. We're not at that stage yet. So it's kind of the biggest tournament the game's had so far.
And there's a couple of teams there who basically are just Overwatch teams, right? They're not kind of... This is their thing. They're not like wider esports. Yeah,
it's pretty interesting. They're also some of the best teams there are. Reunited and Rogue are the two that are kind of at the front of the pack at the moment. The last big tournament, which was the one that happened at Gamescom, they fought it out in the finals. And yeah, they're teams they're just Overwatch teams. Reunited used to be Fnatic's Battlefield team, but they split off from them. Turned into an Overwatch organisation, got their own sponsorships, and Rogue are just 6 really good Overwatch players. And then on top of that, they're also going up against these massive teams that are from well-established Counter-Strike teams, Dota teams that have got, now they're getting into Overwatch, and they're holding their own, which is great to see.
And we had a Reddit AMA with a couple of the casters of late to sort of just fill people in on the details, right?
Yeah, they pretty much, there was a bit of advertising and a bit of letting people know, how the tournament's going, what it's like behind the scenes, what these people think of Overwatch. The AMA was with DDK and ZP, who are 2 different casters. DDK comes from the CSGO side of things, and ZP, I believe, used to be a Heroes player, Heroes of the Storm player, and then a caster as well. And yeah, they ran an AMA on Reddit. There was a decent number of questions. They answered a lot of different stuff, alternated between the funny stuff and pretty serious answers about, the tournament and the future of Overwatch. And it's worth a read if you've got a bit of time.
And how is the Overwatch competitive scene at the moment? Obviously, it's in its infancy, and you talk about the prize money, which for an Overwatch tournament is big, but for a wider world of esports tournament is still piddling, really. So, how are things developing and growing?
It's interesting, really. Blizzard have taken a very interesting tack with it, where they've kind of let it be other organisations that run these big prize pool tournaments between the biggest teams, whereas they themselves are instead, focusing on this World Cup thing. There's no actual prize money for that. There's like appearance fees, but it's not like first place is getting $1 million or anything, or $8 million in the case of Dota 2. So it's kind of hard to predict how it's going to go. Everyone seems very confident that it's going to be huge. It's got 15 million plus players. It's difficult to have an online game with that number of players that doesn't develop an esports scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd have to be actively working against it as the developer, which they're not. They're involved. They're obviously paying attention to this stuff. They're very, very good at balancing, focusing on that without losing the casual core that is the majority of those 15 million players. Most of those people probably haven't even heard of Overwatch esports, but they managed to keep the game interesting for those people while leaving the invested people like me, you, and all the people watching these tournaments. And yeah, the viewer numbers are good. The prize money for this younger game is good. The number of teams, that are coming from bigger organisations, as much as we talk about Reunited and Rogue and that being great, you need to have Fnatic showing up and having a team, or Envious or Ninjas in Pyjamas, which are 2 huge CSGO teams, and their Overwatch teams are also very good. You need to have that to bring in fans of those teams. And have people looking at the game and going, oh, this is something interesting, this is something I could get invested in as a spectator, even if I'm not interested in playing it, which is true in a number of esports.
It's interesting because you sort of can't force it, because you need the growth to be organic enough to have the interest, and then the advertisers and the sponsors to fund the prize money, and then when the prize money gets bigger, that generates more interest, and it kind of picks up its own momentum. But unless you just, have some massive cash injection and go, oh, we're giving away 20 million to the winning team of a tournament we've just set up, then people will sit up and listen. But you sort of just can't do that out of nowhere, I suppose.
Yeah, no, you can't. And that's true across basically every aspect of esports. Like, you can't just force people to be interested by throwing money at it. People have tried, they've run one big tournament, and then nobody's cared after that tournament's over. And the same is true of game design. Like, there's pretty much no esport in the history of games that was designed to be one and was then successful, that wasn't just like a straight rip of a previous game that was never designed to be an esport and then turned into one. Like Counter-Strike Global Offensive, that was designed to be, a highly competitive online game, but that's because they saw how successful it was with the original Counter-Strike that was just a mod somebody made. And Dota 2, same story. Somebody made Dota, and then people discovered they could play it really well. Overwatch, they never said, oh, this is our next big esport. They said, we'd love there to be Overwatch esports.
Yeah,
and then they made a good game.
And that's the thing, with the game being as good as it is and structured the way it is and that many people playing, you feel like it's just a matter of time, I suppose.
Yeah, pretty much.
So a section which will probably become something of a regular on the show is there are changes on the PTR to various abilities and tweaks, UI stuff. This is a kind of something we'll be discussing fairly regularly. What has been changed on the PTR of late?
So at the moment, it's pretty much a small patch that's gone up. They're taking a look at Ana, Widowmaker, and Junkrat on the balance side of things. Buffs to Widowmaker and Junkrat, like really minor stuff. Widowmaker's scope speed is going up by 0.2 seconds. Joel, try to control yourself.
I've been waiting for this all my life.
Oh, yes. And Junkrat's ult is getting able to be used a little faster. These are the kind of buffs that they like to throw out where it's just something that will make playing those characters just a little more fun. Like, if you're building up Junkrat's ult and you're playing pretty well and you're doing nice, and then you press Q and he does his voice line and the whole enemy team turns around and blows up before it can even, like, move out of, the mine can move out from where he is and actually try and attack people. That's not fun. So they're changing that. They're making it so Widowmaker can kind of see a bit easier. That'll probably be a pretty big buff to the pro scene. Where she hasn't proved as popular as you might think, the sniper character would.
Yeah.
And then Ana's getting a nerf to her ult because it's really easy to build up.
Okay.
And it's super powerful with even a minor amount of coordination. But she's also getting a small buff, A, to kind of compensate for that, and B, to make it a little easier to hit targets. Which is on her biotic grenade, which helps her heal and helps her do a bit more damage.
And then there are a handful of non-character specific tweaks in addition to that, correct?
Yeah, they're making a few changes to the UI. A few of the menus are getting changed just to look a little nicer. They're also doing a few quality of life tweaks to the way voice lines trigger, making it so not Bastion, Reinhardt will mention that his shield's coming down a bit more often, so his team won't have to always be like, is it about to break? Are we all going to die?
Right,
and, it just makes it a little easier for players in normal games, not at, the super high level where they're all communicating, to be like, oh, this Reinhardt's about to put shield down. We better get out of the way, or we better hurry up.
I love that that's called a quality of life tweak. Like your whole life is suffering, and what you really needed was a voice line tweak in Overwatch.
This is going to improve
everything's
my life
going to be fine now.
By 5 to 10%.
5 to 10% at least.
Yeah.
So this will be rolled out, we think. So it's Wednesday as we're recording this. It'll be rolled out next Tuesday, we presume. Yeah,
probably something like that. It kind of depends, if people say, oh, there's this huge bug, and then Blizzard are like, wow, we have no idea how to fix that.
Mm-hmm.
Might wait a bit longer. Alternatively, some of the changes, they might decide they want to do something a bit bigger or a bit smaller. But yeah, I would guess next week, just because it's quite a small patch, and that there's nothing humongous in there. Although something in it that is pretty important, not for the PC players, which I expect is the majority of people listening to this, but for anyone that uses a controller. If you use a controller on PC, you have my utmost respect.
Is respect the word you were looking for then?
I respect what they're doing.
I see.
I hope they're not on my team.
Sure.
They can be on the enemy team.
Yeah,
that's fine.
That'd be great, yeah.
If you are someone who uses a controller to play the game, they're making a couple of pretty huge fixes that should make it better. I don't use a controller. I haven't played a console shooter in about 10 years. I couldn't tell you exactly what they're doing.
Are the fixes your controller morphs into a mouse and keyboard?
No.
Oh.
But hopefully they're working on that.
Okay.
Maybe that's coming slightly after the map editor.
Just after BlizzCon, yeah.
Yeah, just immediately after BlizzCon. So yeah, it's like some dead zone fixes and some sensitivity tuning that should make it basically more in line with what people are used to from playing Call of Duty, Halo and that sort of thing on console.
And we will end today with what will also probably become something of a regular. I don't have a name for this section other than where the is Sombra. But if you've got any good name suggestions, then drop them below. Ben, where the hell's Sombra?
I don't know. Blizzard don't know. The community doesn't know. Everyone wishes they knew, and nothing's happening at the moment.
So yeah, I mean, basically, all jokes aside, that's the thing. Nothing of late has happened since sort of all the ARG excitement. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. The ARG ran. The ending of it was disappointing, even if the ARG was enjoyable. There's quite a bit of debate as to whether the ARG should have been run or not. If it was that or nothing, cool. That said, you probably shouldn't tease your audience with some sort of big reveal and then reveal a countdown from a countdown from a countdown. We'll hear more at BlizzCon. That's almost certainly where she'll be revealed. And if anything pops up, we'll let you know on future episodes.
So we think revealed at BlizzCon and then rolled out after that in the weeks after that?
Probably in that patch we were talking about earlier. That'll be, a couple of weeks afterwards, somewhere in mid-November, would be my guess. And she'll be playable on the show floor. We'll bring you impressions and hopefully some video from that.
Right, that's it for this week. Stay tuned next week when we will be rounding up the Overwatch Open. We'll have a winner by then, talking about any further character balance changes and possibly looking ahead to BlizzCon if there's anything to talk about. But yeah, all things Overwatch. Stay tuned for Overwatch This coming at you next Wednesday.